Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the performance for Quantum Break on the PC, and more specifically it's going to be the DirectX 11 version that is now available on Steam. If you're not familiar, this game came out earlier this year exclusively on Xbox One and the Windows Store, and it was mired with really awful performance on the PC for AMD as well as Nvidia. So a lot of people have been waiting for this game to come out on Steam to hope that the DX11 performance would maybe be a little bit better. So that's what we're going to be going to take a look at here today with the GTX 1080 as well as the RX 480 and the GTX 1060. And before we do jump into those performance numbers, I do want to take a look at the options menu and go over in here, what options I'm using and explain some of them here to you guys, because this was not as simple as just cracking the game up at Ultra and just, running free throughout the world, because even on a GTX 1080, I was having trouble running this game with everything turned all the way up. So we can see right now I'm playing at 1440p, and I have the exclusive full screen option enabled. There is also windowed and borderless window if you do want to use that. You can turn VSync on or off if you want to, and this does support over 60 hertz monitors. So if you're playing on a 120 or 144 hertz monitor, it is going to support that, and it also supports ultra wide resolutions as well. I'll put a couple of screenshots up on the screen for you now right here, where you can see that when it is an ultra wide versus the 16:9, it actually is adding additional information at the sides of the screen, and the game's HUD also goes off to the sides of the screen as well. So hopefully that is good for all of you ultra wide users out there. You can also choose to lock the game to 30 FPS if you want to, although I really don't know why you would unless you were really struggling with the performance. You can turn your HUD on and off if you want to, as well as subtitles. Now, for the settings, I do actually have some things turned down, specifically volumetric lighting. I have that down at medium, which is the lowest that it can go, and I also have screen space reflections off, because I found by lowering just these two options, I was able to take my GTX 1080 my GTX 1080 at Ultra and go from an average of 34 FPS to 58 FPS just by lowering those two options at 1440p. Yes, you heard me right. If I have everything up at Ultra, GTX 1080 at 1440p is averaging 34 FPS in this game, and we're going to go over all those numbers in just a moment, but I just wanted to let you guys know just how big of an impact these two options alone will have on how the game runs for you. Everything else in here though is up at Ultra. We have shadow resolution, shadow filtering, texture resolution, geometry level of detail, screen space, ambient occlusion. We also have our effects quality, global illumination quality, anti-aliasing, which is just a toggle on or off, and then upscaling. And this is another option that we have to talk about here, because by default, if you go through the presets, it's going to put upscaling on, which will give you a big boost in performance. But if you're not familiar with what upscaling is, I recently did a video actually on temporal filtering, where effectively what this does is it takes the game and it renders it at half the resolution of what you're playing, and then it applies a form of MSAA in order to improve the rougher edges being presented into the game. So if you choose to run the game, with everything else up at Ultra and upscaling on, you'll get a boost in performance, but just know that you're not going to be running the game at your native resolution, whatever it happened to be, 1080p, 1440, 4K, if you can even run this game at 4K. It's an absolute killer, this game. But if you do put that upscaling on, you'll get a boost in FPS, but a lower visual quality, because you'll be playing at half resolution, like I said there. So we're going to go ahead now and jump in and talk about some of the numbers here. And just so you guys are aware, I was using the latest drivers for this from NVIDIA as well as AMD. So for NVIDIA, that's 372.90, and on the AMD side, it's 16.9.2. Starting off with the GTX 1080 in my main rig here with the i7 6800K and 32 gigabytes of RAM, the GTX 1080 at 1080p on ultra settings, and that's with everything turned all the way up, including the screen space reflections and the volumetric lighting. We saw an average of 58 FPS and a minimum of 49. That's right, even at 1080p with everything up at Ultra, this game was not able to maintain a solid 60 FPS, despite the GPU being fully utilized and the CPU was not being maxed out all the way. For 1440p up at Ultra, I saw an average of 34 FPS and a minimum of 29. So you could see at 1440p, if you have everything up at Ultra, you're really taking a massive hit there. And as a result of that, I didn't even bother testing in 4K, because I knew this game would not be able to run on the GTX 1080 with everything turned all the way up. I also did test the 1440p with those two options adjusted there. And if you remember, actually at 1080p, I got an average of 58 and a minimum of 49. Well, at 1440p, with just the volumetric lighting turned down to medium and the screen space reflections off, I got the exact same result as 1080p, an average of 58 and a minimum of 49. So you can see I got a boost there of 24 FPS at the average and a boost of 20 on the minimums at 1440p just by adjusting those two options. So definitely something to consider if you are trying to play this game and you're having trouble getting a playable frame rate. Those are two options you're probably going to want to look to lower first before you even bother digging into the other ones, because most of the other options I found didn't really affect the performance all that much for me. Switching over now to the mid-range system along with the i5 6600K and 16 gigabytes of RAM. We start off here with the RX 480 testing on 1080p at the medium preset with upscaling off. So I used the medium preset, which does put upscaling on, so I did disable that because I wanted to test this at the native resolution. And at 1080p at medium, we saw an average of 47 FPS and a minimum of 22. So you can see on the mid-range card here with an RX 480, it is really struggling with this game at 1080p, even on medium. So definitely something to note out there. If you're going to want to pick this game up, you're going to want to make sure you have a pretty beefy GPU in order to be able to run it. And over on the NVIDIA side, they did edge out the RX 480 here quite considerably, especially in the minimums. We saw an average of 56 FPS and a minimum of 49. So definitely in the minimums there, it really beat it there, compared the 49 to the 22 of the RX 480, and it beat them on the averages as well with the 56 versus the 47 average FPS. And that with both of those cards, that was at 1080p with the medium with upscaling off so that we were on the native resolution. If you did want to get a boost there, you can go ahead and put the upscaling on, but again, you're going to be running at about half resolution with MSAA, and for me personally, I didn't really enjoy looking at that. I would rather lower some other visual details into in the game before I start getting into any upscaling like that, or even just lowering down the native res, like if you were playing at 1440 and lowering it down to 1080, I still thought that looked better than using 1440p with upscaling personally. That was, just looking at the game, going back and forth and switching between the options, that's what I personally thought looked better to me. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, guys. If you are thinking about picking up Quantum Break on Steam, if you want, I'm going to put a link down below to CD Keys where you can get the game for $28 right now, which is less than what you can get it for on Steam. It's retailing for $40 on Steam, but if you get it for $40 on Steam, remember that you do have the option to return it if the game is not running well for you, if you're not happy with the performance. For me personally, though, I'm happy to play this game, at 1440p with some of the options lowered, because from everything I've heard as far as the gameplay is concerned, I haven't played enough of it to really make a final decision on it. But I've heard the gameplay and the story in Quantum Break is incredible, and having really enjoyed Alan Wake previously from Remedy, I'm looking forward to diving into this game and playing it all the way through to completion, and I'm glad that I have a system capable of running it. But unfortunately for people on some older hardware and lower spec systems, you may have a very difficult time running Quantum Break. And I'm not really sure if the visuals totally justify that type of performance. I think what we're looking at here most likely is a bad port, unfortunately. So and we're talking about a game that was ported from the console to the PC for DirectX 12 on the Windows Store, and then ported from that to DirectX 11 for Steam. So it's like there's a lot working against this game that doesn't look good on paper. So I'm just happy that I can at least play the game now, considering that it does have such good reviews as far as the story and the gameplay is concerned. So I'm going to get out of here and go jump into some more Quantum Break and enjoy the game, and hopefully this video helped you guys out if you're trying to make a purchase decision based on the performance you could expect in Quantum Break. And if this video helped you out at all, please stick a like on it down below and let me know in the comments, and we can discuss this further. But until next time, I'll catch you next time. Well, did I just say until next time I'll catch you next time? I totally did. I shouldn't do that. All right, anyway, I will catch you next time though. Sure.